The wise person realizes in one's purified intellect through Samadhi the infinite Brahman, which is something like the nature of eternal knowledge and absolute bliss, which has no exemplars, which transcends all limitations, is ever free, without any movement, and which is like the limitless sky, indivisible, absolute, and bliss. This is the state, the internal state, the experience of what is called Samadhi, which we are going to discuss. And this quotation was from the crest jewel of discernment by Sri Shankaracharya. He was a paragon of Vedanta. The Samadhi, conquest of life and death. In the Gospel, we come across a gentleman coming to Sri Ramakrishna and asking, "Sir, can you teach me quickly this thing called Samadhi?" And everybody laughs. Well, we are not going to do all that. But it is the highest experience possible for a human mind. And to kind of get a glimpse of it, it's a state of knowledge. But super-sensory knowledge that transcends the senses and the mind and the intellect and the sense of individuality. That's the reason why there can't be any comparisons. If anyone reads the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, it's obvious that the entirety of the Gospel is nothing but a discourse on Samadhi. I don't know how many of you have noticed it. But the means, the actual experience, post-experience, and the living in bliss and knowledge is perfectly delineated for the different aspirants, the different levels of Samadhi. Samadhi is not just one. There are multiple levels. Okay. This gospel then embodies the teachings of Samadhi. Well, Samadhi is a big word, especially in California. Oh, everybody talks about Samadhi. And when I first came here to California, I said, so many people have attained Samadhi here. Well, I didn't tell them the unpleasant truth that they are mistaken. This is the speciality of scriptures. You see, the entire Vedic religion, the entire Upanishadic religion, all these things are the outcome of Samadhi. It is spoken, these teachings have been spoken from the state of Samadhi. And so they embody Samadhi. And they can be interpreted or understood only by those who have experienced this. Otherwise, we just call it, oh, that's mystical writings, mystical poetry, mystical teachings. There actually is nothing mystical about it. It's just that they are too deep and they can be penetrated only by a mind that experiences it. So much for the beginning. It's so difficult. In a way it's difficult, but in a way it isn't. Swami Vivekananda says, a quote, "Samadhi is the property of every human being. Nay, every animal, from the lowest to the highest angel, sometime or the other, each one will have to come to this state. And then alone will religion begin." So when we call ourselves religion, we are kind of dabbling in mud pies. We haven't come down to the real religion. And so this is the commencement of religion proper. Now we know that, it's the property of every human mind. And still it's difficult. And when you look around, what do you see? Actually, in Santa Barbara, it looks so beautiful and so calm and peaceful. There's a sage called Narada. He goes to another sage called Sanat Kumara. This is found in the Upanishad called the Chandogya. And the sage teaches him, meditation is indeed greater than intelligence. The earth is meditating, as it were. The intermediate regions are meditating, as it were. Heaven is meditating, as it were. The waters are meditating, as it were. The mountains are meditating, as it were. The gods and the humans are meditating, as it were. Therefore, those amongst humans who attain greatness here, they verily appear to have acquired a portion of the results of this meditation. And then he makes a classical distinction between this, the serious aspirants who are in one with nature, and those who are small-minded, quarrelsome, jealous, and slanderous. There we are. So, Samadhi, deep meditation, is the property of every human mind as well as nature. Apart from the various methodologies that are enumerated in the scriptures, well, through the path of knowledge, or the path of yoga, or the path of, you can say, devotion, etc., it's very clear. They also say that any activity or work or worship done with utmost concentration can lead you to this state. A musician or an artist or a sculptor, that person has to become immersed in this idea of what the person is doing, what person is creating. The more absorbed the person is, the more concentration will lead us to these higher realms of the mind. So humans have dreamt about immortality, and every religion has commenced in trying to find out what exactly happens when a person dies. Yes, and various religions have handled this question variously. But we are just swamped with this old age, disease, and these existential problems. They are all over. So when you try to understand what is death, there's a kind of finality to it. Well, to some, not to others. And death has been kind of stalking us day and night. It's like that shadow we throw. You just can't get rid of your shadow. At the same time, humans have been such an efficient killing machines. There's no efficient killing machine as a human being. Killing things, killing people around, killing the environment, killing birds and animals, killing. And yet, when it comes to reckoning their own death, then they recoil in fear and uncertainty. How do you transcend this death? The Bhagavad Gita says this world is the realm of death, Martya Loka. And when it comes to understanding life, oh my God, hundreds and hundreds of books and literature and movies and songs and the like are just being churned out, trying to understand what is life. Is simply biology or physiology? What? Is it psychology? Is it neurology? Everything is a search for what is called life. We are still searching for the answers. But under the taldrum of this life and death, we seem to be kind of shutting ourselves off to higher dimensions of life and as well as, you can say, mind. So this mind is also integral to both life and death. These are just modes. Life and death are just modes of a mind. I would say it is a mind that has become minted into what is called life and death. And when we come down to the realms of the mind, we learn a little of neurology and neurons and how they are firing. And we say, this is the mind. Oh, how deluded can we become? There are vast realms of the mind. They're still unknown. It's only the yogis who have understood the grand potentiality, the powers of the mind. It's tremendous. Western psychology has not even begun to scratch the surface of this grand science. So mind, the mind element. So to conquer life and death, one has to understand and conquer the mind first. Okay. So much for the introduction. Yeah. We haven't even entered into the main topic. Okay. And people ask me this Samadhi business. Yeah, it's become a big business, you know. I tell them, well, in this state, one dies. What? Yeah. You know, Sri Ramakrishna used to often go into Samadhi. And all through the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna you find in various samadhis. So one time he goes into a state of samadhi. There were two doctors. One of them was Dr. Mahendralal Sarkar. He was a great doctor. And his friend. He goes and then they check his heartbeat with a stethoscope, and there's no heartbeat at all. There's no respiration at all. There's no pulse. There's no body heat. So the other doctor, he puts his finger in Sri Ramakrishna's open eyes and there's no reaction at all. And they were stunned. After a while, Sri Ramakrishna's mind descends on this now, and then he behaves like any other normal human being. Like during a kind of a congregational singing, people were kind of stunned to see, and they were talking about Sri Ramakrishna getting into that state and coming down of it and saying, there's a guy who repeatedly dies and revives. Come, let's go and see him. Here it is. So you've got to pay something. You don't get anything free. Are you willing for the body to completely shut itself off? No. Yeah, because we have identified ourselves, our existence, as the body. And that's the reason why there's a fear. There's a vaster dimensions. It's something like, I would say, we all experienced swoon or we are fainting. And as we are trying to fight that swoon, it just completely overwhelms us. And the lights go off. And then we are revived, and what happened? We are the same person that emerges out of this state. Well, a yogi will, through yoga, deliberately get into this state. The body will shut itself off, but that person enters into a luminous ocean of light. So the difference between an ordinary person and a person who goes into that state is, Swami Vivekananda says, an ordinary person goes into this state of swoon or sleep or whatever and comes back the same person. And a fool, even if he goes into the state of samadhi, comes out a sage. That's the fundamental difference. So that's a huge, you can say, difference, not fundamental, huge. Okay, so now what is samadhi? The word yoga is actually what is called samadhi. Yuj, yog, samadho. Okay. And that's why the yoga aphorisms are called the samadhi aphorisms. So this is, there are two fundamental meanings to this. One is extreme, ultra concentration, and the other is to join, to yoke. It's the same old word, yoga, yoke, union. The individual consciousness with the supreme consciousness. So generally people speak about these things either in one sense or the other. The Yoga Sutras, the Yoga aphorisms speak about it as ultra concentration. There are steps leading to it, of course. So in the beginning itself, it's laid out that quelling all the waves of the mind is a form of samadhi. Yoga is chitta vritti nirodha. The mind kind of heaves and moves, obviously. Quelling all that movement one enters into Samadhi. You won't get into too much technical details, but you get the idea of what it is like. Try to still your mind. My mind is restless. Sri Ramakrishna gives an example of, it's like, okay, people have gone to watch a play in a theater. And before the curtains are up, they are conversing, hello, how are you? And just doing some small talk. And part of their attention is when the curtain will open. And there's a huge, you can say, conversation going on. The level of noise is amazing there. And then the curtain opens and everybody becomes silent. They are focused on the stage. And after the curtain is rung down, then conversation again commences. So Sri Ramakrishna says, when the curtain of Maya is again dropped, the mind becomes externalized. Okay. So much for this state. Okay. The internal teachings of this science of Samadhi is never given out in books. I mean, the books can't answer many things, and many things cannot be actually written down. So they are transmitted from the teacher to the disciple. And this has been going on for thousands of years. But the major part of the secret is practice over and over and over and over again. So remember, there's no secret once you start practicing it. What happens is every time you practice, you are laying down layers after layers of memories connected to this state of consciousness. Whether you're devotional in nature or you're trying to do it through knowledge or through yoga or whatever, you're laying down beds and beds of layers and layers of impressions. These are called the controlling impressions, nirodha samskara. And they counter the other unspiritual impressions, the worldly impressions. Until these are not countered, it is not possible for the mind to leap into that state. So all the impressions in the mind through this controlling mechanism. So every time you take the Lord's name, you practice meditation, whatever, you, by that very act, are also laying down controlling impressions, memories, huge memories. So how do we know? Yeah, it's known. And how long does it take? Well, Sri Ramakrishna's Vedanta guru, Totapuri, it took him 40 years of strenuous practice. Well, and of course, Sri Ramakrishna took 3 days to get into the highest state. But he was a kind of different, there's a kettle of fish. Now we are coming down to a kind of, so it's also described something as, there are 2 other stages before Samadhi. One is concentration. That concentration matures into meditation, dhyana. The word meditation is used in a kind of not in that technical aspect of dhyana, but you get a point. It's absorption, complete absorption. And that leads us to Samadhi. Perfect concentration. The Swami Vivekananda explains it. When the mind is held to a particular spot, whether external or internal, that is external within the body, which body? The subtle body. So we have a gross body and we have also a subtle body inside. Or internally, even deeper, then the mind has the habit of flowing to that point. And as the flow gets deeper and deeper, there is a gradual reduction in external consciousness. Your body becomes perfectly still. With the stilling of the body, your breath becomes perfectly still and shallow, if you noticed it. And as your breath becomes perfectly still, it almost stops. You're not aware, of course. Then the mind stops. And that stillness is what is required. And then the mind plunges into this deeper level of a state of mind called Samadhi. There. So Swami Vivekananda explains it, when the externals are all rejected and a person can only think of the inner meaning of the object of meditation, that is Samadhi, and lower Samadhis. It's like this, the subject, the object, and what ties them all both together is the process of meditation. So as we keep on concentrating, this object slowly gravitates towards the subject. As the processes are getting finer and finer, and as the object, as it were, gravitates towards the subject, you lose external consciousness, and the subject, the object, and the process of meditation fuse. That is Samadhi. Simple as that. So it's kind of alignment. When you're sitting down, the mind is running towards hundreds of places. Reduce those hundreds of places to one place. And this one place also has to be concentrated upon, then the mind flows. It's like, we talk about the state of flow. It's effortless. You are striving without striving. We are in the flow. We are in the state of flow. We are this and that. But people listen to music, and people playing music, they get into the athletes and all these. We all do experience a little of this state of flow, when the mind completely is concentrated and your body kind of takes over those activities automatically. There is no sense of fatigue. There's no sense of pain, nothing. You are kind of lifted up. Something like this happens as you are concentrating, when you're getting into that state of flow. And then the mind completely takes over, because it is impelled by all those layers and layers of impressions that you have laid down over the years, and focuses out there. In the process, the mind experienced tremendous bliss. And this bliss cannot be comprehended in ordinary sense of the term. Every pore of your body is as it were bursting with bliss. Say, reality is so dry and so, yeah, who said so? Existence, reality is always blissful. It's always consciousness, knowledge. So one gets in touch with this. Okay. So again, now what is Samadhi? Well, I'll run through a few, can say, stages mentioned in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. The first one, you see Sri Ramakrishna getting into that heightened state of consciousness called Bhava Samadhi. What is Bhava? He himself explains it. Is to establish first a relationship with the object of meditation, that is God. You always meditate on a divine object. And to remember it all the times. What's the relationship? It takes a form of, I'm a child of God, I'm a part of God. I'm a servant of God. And then constantly remember it at all times. In the waking and even in dream, you'll dream about it also. So as the bonds become firm, then that object of meditation comes alive. It's no longer a static. First you'll see it in 3D. You start meditating on the form in 2 dimensions. And then you start seeing it in 3 dimensions. It comes alive. It can talk to you, it can touch you, it can play with you, and you go and play along with that. It's a tremendous state. You have entered into another realm of consciousness called, a higher realm called the Bhava. Okay, so much for Chetana. In that state you get completely immersed. But there's another state in where they say, I want to taste sugar, I don't want to be sugar. Good enough, you don't come down with those diabetes, but people retain that sense of individuality, that I am a part of God, that I still hasn't become diluted. It's still in its crystallized form, transformed, of course, mature form. So this is called Chetana Samadhi, consciousness Samadhi. The third is Sri Ramakrishna Unmana Samadhi. That is, he gives an example of, like you have an open umbrella, it's raining outside, you come indoors and you close the umbrella. What happens? So to pull the mind and the senses and all consciousness to a point with one fluid motion is the way. But Sri Ramakrishna says this doesn't last too long. It breaks because of old impressions that are clamoring for attention. Then there is something called a Sthita Samadhi. That's a little deeper. One can stay in this state for a long. Sthita means to be established in it. You can stay in it for a long time. Now this long time business is only from our standpoint. For that person transcends time, that person transcends space, that person transcends all the known laws, chemical and biological and physical and everything. So that person may be in for a few seconds, and when the person emerges out, he may think, wow, I was there for a few seconds. No, you were there for a couple of months. Oh, really? Reminds me of that Rip Van Winkle, goes to sleep and wakes up. Many things have passed away. So that person transcends time. And obviously, if you are going to transcend, if you are going to conquer life and death, you've got to conquer time. And it is there. Time itself is a dimension connected to space, and then you transcend that. Then there is something called the Jada, deep Samadhi, the Nirvikalpa. This is the highest state where it's an absolute experience which I just read in the beginning of this talk. Like a sky, infinite, without movement, and that sky is a consciousness. It's a luminous ocean of light. Sri Ramakrishna says his first experience was, I was sinking in a luminous ocean of light. So before one merges, one feels, like Swami Vivekananda says, I'm like a piece of glass in an ocean of light. And then the piece of glass also melts. And what remains is, as the scriptures say, that is beyond words and thoughts. Avang manasa gochara. You cannot describe it, you cannot explain it. It has transcended all relative knowledge, it has transcended the mind. So much for that. But those, I think if they are, just to kind of put it on record, there are various levels. First, you take an object, you meditate on it within time and space. You take that same object as your meditation matures, to meditate upon it bereft of time and space. And then you take the subtle part of that same object. Like every object has a subtle component in it. And meditate on that within time and space, and again without time and space. And then, you meditate on the mind itself, the mind meditating upon the mind. There is no external object now anymore. And then you meditate on your own sense of individuality. So these are corresponding higher and higher and higher stages. They all fall within the lower realm of samadhi called the savikalpa samadhi. So the highest one is nirvikalpa. I think you've heard of this, nirvikalpa samadhi. I bet nirvikalpa samadhi, and everybody said. So this is what, when people ask me, you see what happened? I had an experience of samadhi. I said, how much LSD did you take? What? And one guy was kind of honest enough. Yeah, I had taken a couple of tabs. I said, okay, all that experience is within your own brain. What do you mean? Yeah. Like, even if you have a sensory deprivation, your brain will get into a tizzy. It will show you things which you have not even understood. The neurons are confused. Or, the neurons are firing like mad. And you see some of the lights and sounds and think, oh, that's a state of samadhi. Oh, no. So I tell them, to understand samadhi, you've got to understand yoga psychology as well as cosmology. What has cosmology got to do with me? Yes. Because when you get into this state, you are transcending your own bodies and senses and minds, including your brains, of course. And you are in touch with the universe. A person, he exits his or her individuality and enters into the universality. Swami Vivekananda, in his hymn to Samadhi, I'll just read a few lines. All lights extinct, in the great void of space floats the image universe. The whole universe appears like an image, like an idea. In the mind, in the void of mind involute, there floats this fleeting universe. It rises and falls and rises and sinks again. So he's talking about the cosmic mind. In this current, there flows an I. Now that is not your I, that is a cosmic I. Slowly, the shadow multitude entered the primeval womb, and flowed ceaselessly. And lo, the sense of I also has ceased. Even that current flows no more. Void merged into void, beyond speech and mind. One whose heart understands, one verily does. This is now void. I don't mean it's not the Shunyavada of the Buddhist, where there are no names and forms, where the mind has leaped into its supersensuous realms. So you have a subconscious level, which we all know very well, because everybody is kind of knocked down by trauma and anxiety and stress and all these various things. It's a subconscious mind. It plays a huge role in your mind, in your life. And there's a conscious mind, things are coming through the senses and we are kind of interacting with the external world. The subconscious mind, we interact with the inner old world. And in the superconscious, you don't interact with anything. Not with yourself, not with the external world. You, as it were, throw open the door. They say, knock and the door shall be open to you. Exactly. It might not open with a few knocks. You need to use your shoulder, you need to do everything, get a crowbar, kick the damn door open. And it will open. And when it opens, you are in the superconscious realm of your own mind. And this superconscious realm transcends the universe. Like consciousness, which is within us, also is transcendent, because that same consciousness which in me is within you all and within everything in this universe, in the birds and plants and trees and everything. It's the same consciousness. So this super consciousness also transcends all name and form. It is void in the void, knowledge within knowledge. It's a tremendous feeling. This is called liberation. This is what transcends all life and death and all mind and everything. This is the perfect conquest of the whole universe. First, like before you conquer the universe, you've got to feel yourself as a universe. People say, I've got Samadhi. I said, do you feel you are, your body is the whole universe? Because like you feel your own body, this is me, this feeling will go and you will feel the entire world to be your own self. And then you transcend that also. So, now the problem comes is, with all these high definitions and, my God, I don't know what's going to happen to me and what's going to happen to everyone else. Will we just dream? We can't even dream about it. It's so rarefied. And so what do we do? Millions of us, what do we do? Well, I want to end up with a note of hope. We have hope. Say, no, I'm not going to put in 40 years practicing meditation. Oh, no. Just impossible. When Sri Ramakrishna saw one of his pictures, he looks at that picture and says, this is the high state of yoga. This will be worshipped in every home as time passes by. Looking at his own picture, he himself worships it. And Holy Mother also and the direct disciples, we worship it. We are worshipping Sri Ramakrishna, who is actually in the state of Samadhi. We are, in a way, worshipping that Samadhi. Now that huge literature on Samadhi, which is sometimes so terse and sometimes so subtle, is now embodied, is personalized in the form of Sri Ramakrishna. Yes. And like I mentioned, the gospel of Sri Ramakrishna is nothing but his words spoken from that state. Well, here we are. So we have been worshipping this picture. It's not a picture, it's an ideal. This represents the high state of Samadhi. And what do we do? Yeah. Sri Ramakrishna always should say, meditate on this. He never should say, I. Meditate on this. You will get everything if you do. Meditate on this. And Swami Vivekananda also, he speaks about Sri Ramakrishna as the helper in yoga. One whose mind is absorbed in Samadhi. You have manifested yourself as the Lord of this age. You are the helper in Samadhi. Trimbita Yuga Ishvara Jaga Ishvara Yoga Sa. So you are our helper in yoga. So this state of Samadhi is also reaching out to us so that we also can attain this blessed state. It's now even become easier. It's now within our grasp. No longer you have to practice it for 40 years and constantly. You can do so by surrendering yourself to Sri Ramakrishna. You will conquer life and death, attain that immortality and everything that is heir to the divine human nature. So Swami Vivekananda says, the animal man, the immature man, has his pleasure in the senses. A human being has his pleasure in thoughts and in intellect. And a God, that is spiritual people, have their joy in spiritual contemplation. So once we can contemplate this form, the embodiment of Samadhi, the personalized, you can say, aspect of Samadhi, here, tangible, and one who is reaching out to us, we will conquer life and death. Om, peace, peace, peace. We will, after I kind of greet the people who are leaving, I leave some time for QA. Okay.
Feel the love within you growing. Feel the light within you glowing.
Well, after this beautiful, profound song, we don't need a closing chant. This itself is a chant. There is an announcement for next Sunday. Swami Arupeshananda, who stays in our center in Pinion Hills, he will speak on God's instruments. Om, peace, peace, peace. Yes, so some devotees are saying, it's kind of, someone has to bite the bullet. It's just kind of, otherwise, many people would like to kind of just gingerly sidestep this topic because it's so kind of vast, but we have to kind of lay it down what exactly it is, so that we can approach it with confidence. So that's the simply saying, it's all so difficult, it is so subtle, that will throw off people. Yeah, kind of, what is this? So why bother? And then besides, we see our own limitations. Yes. And most of these limitations have come through culture, through your neighborhood, through your relatives, to your friends. Oh, you are stupid, you're an idiot, you're a fool, you're good for nothing. And we've come to believe all those lies about us. So once we start practicing, these things become clear, that they are not essentially us. We are essentially divine. So one of the things that I never kind of mentioned there is like, you start with that self-confidence. Yes, I have the thing that is required to attain that state. If you think, oh, I'm so small and so insignificant, that makes things difficult. So it's just more like our attitude towards this subject. If you think it's difficult, it's going to be difficult. If you think it's attainable, it is attainable. Yeah. So what do we have?
You had some questions online already. On YouTube, you had the question, have you ever experienced Samadhi during the lecture?
During the lecture?
Yeah.
No, not.
Not during the lecture. Have you ever experienced
I mean, during the lecture I experienced Samadhi? No. You know, Sri Ramakrishna used to say, oh, mother, don't make me unconscious. I want to interact with people. So it's just, well, that, you know, it's an open question, but it's never answered in public. Certain things are to be kind of told on a one-to-one kind of basis.
Another question was, can you see Sri Ramakrishna in Samadhi?
Oh, yes. Sri Ramakrishna, you can see Sri Ramakrishna. It's, people think that it's a picture, it's an image, and it's a kind of it's a historical figure, a spiritual figure, whatever. No. That Sri Ramakrishna is more real than this world. Once you can see Sri Ramakrishna, somehow push yourself, this world will appear like a kind of a pale shadow. You will interact with it, but it has lost its venom. It will lose its reality. So be prepared for that also. And what happens is you'll experience tremendous bliss. Everything that you see will throw you into bliss. Everything. There's now nothing good or even bad. It's all divine.
The other question is, you were talking about. Oh, thank you. You were talking about the gross mind, the subtle mind, and it seems to be that we have a mind with the intellect and whatnot, but in the gross level we have the brain. So that's an instrument by which we can see about Ramakrishna, hear about Ramakrishna, love, feel love, and it's processed in our brain. So my question to you is, in a subtle body that we have, would there be, what is the instrument by which you are perceiving the subtle or Ramakrishna or whatever you perceive?
Technically, it's a technical question. It's a good question also. The gross body is like a sheath, kind of outer covering. The subtle body has the mind, intellect, the sense of individuality, and memories. Plus, we have all the subtle sensory organs. These organs, the sensory and the motor, are the gross instruments So in the subtle body also there are these, consciousness takes the form of vision and sight and hearing and all these things. And then in the subtle body also are the vital forces. So they say there are 17 components within a subtle body. The 4 stages of the mind which is deliberative in nature, the intellect which is decisive in nature, memory, and the sense of I, 4. Then the 5 sensory organs and the 5 motor organs and the 5 vital forces, so 19 components. So in the subtle body, it's like when you dream. Okay, to give you an example, when you dream, you're in this REM state. Yes, you can see the correlates on the REM, those kind of lazy, like delta waves. But you are seeing that dream in your mind. Isn't it?
It is, but it's not at that time processed in the brain.
It's like, I'll give you an example. It's like, you play the piano?
A little flute.
Yeah, fine, good. Good. You'll understand. So you are not the piano. You are distinct from the piano. So the mind element is so vast. It has taken in the body and the brain. It's within its fold, and the mind plays the piano of the brain, and that runs down through you can say, the nervous system, and the whole thing operates. So whether you can see even without the gross body and the brain, yes. How it's done? Well, the scriptures say like, but it's done. Take for instance, I'll give you Sri Ramakrishna's example in his life. So he used to project his subtle body from where he was staying in Dakshineshwar to Calcutta, take Swami Vivekananda's subtle body out of him, teach him, push that subtle body back in his gross body, and then he used to return. Well, now you say, how do you see? How does he see? Yeah, you can. These are subtle things, but they can. In fact, what you actually see through is consciousness. Consciousness has taken these forms. So you always experience, if you say consciousness is the mind, perfectly okay. I can agree with that. But when you say consciousness is the brain, then I say stop. Okay. This can be measured. Consciousness is like water. It takes the form of everything that it fills. It is itself formless, or consciousness is like space or like air. The air within this room is contained here, so we can understand, there's air here. Yeah. But that's not limiting the air completely. You open the doors and windows, everything. You get air outside also. So consciousness is like one vast ocean of, you can say, space or air. And it is contained within certain things. So actually we see everything through consciousness. And we can see. Consciousness has got various layers. And like I said, the highest layer is the superconsciousness. But that superconsciousness itself has many layers. It's like that superconsciousness has, in a way, modified itself and evolved and become grosser and grosser and grosser and grosser till it becomes this world. Take for instance, Sri Ramakrishna one day was walking with his nephew in Dakshineshwar, And suddenly his nephew says, "Uncle, we are not human, we are divine." He's seeing his whole body full of light, floating on, he's not touching the ground, floating on the air. And he sees his uncle's body also luminous, saying, "Let's go to Calcutta and let us free all people." So uncle says, "Shh, don't make such a big noise." He touches him. And then he was his old, gross, stupid self again. And then he said, "Oh, uncle, why did you do that?" Why? Saying, "I get so many experiences throughout the day. I don't make such a big noise out of it. You get a little and you're making such a big row with it." What did he see? When Sri Ramakrishna also touched Swami Vivekananda, he sees everything as consciousness. What did they see? They never saw bodies and brains. They saw that one consciousness has taken the form. All these forms. Yes, you can see. As you keep on meditating and meditating and meditating, you will find, yes, you can see. Take for instance, there are hundreds of it. There was one Swami who used to teach the Upanishads to a group of novices. And while you're teaching, he gets into a state of Samadhi. Then he comes out of it, all the young men are just quiet. And then that Swami descends from that state. He looks around, saying, where were you all? We are sitting here, you had begun teaching us. I saying, do you smell a beautiful fragrance? No. They kept on. No. Well, as I was teaching you, the gods had come down to listen to these teachings, and I went into the state of Samadhi. Now he could see them, the other guys couldn't see it, and nothing. So their bodies emit a fragrance. Oh, there you are. There are many things. Yeah.
You see this Madonna here? When I was very little, I started to meditate on the Madonna, the feminine. And so I was in a religion this was the one true way. But when I got older, I saw all these other ways that were very beautiful. And to me it became all very beautiful. I met people who were Hindu, and I started yoga 50 years ago.
Wow.
And so I'm interested in this thing you said about the infinite ocean, and you become a piece of glass and melt. And so I think I've been looking for that the whole time. But there are all these ways, like my family, I sit with the Hindus and chant, and I become uplifted, and I go to other places. I sit with the Quakers, and for 50 years I've been quiet in meditation. But and somebody once said, well, you can't dig the well to spirit by doing I see all these things as beautiful, and I go to different places to seek the divine. So you have to dig one well, not have all these shallow wells. And when you're saying to meditate on the Krishna, I just want to know if you could speak to that, about the feminine and about being in...
You know what? Initially, you have to dig in one place, because, and that's what you have done already, meditating on the Madonna. You've got to, first, there's something called a steadfastness in spiritual practices. As you keep on digging deeper and deeper and deeper, you will find, like in some places in the Sahara desert region, to get water, they dig deep down, okay? And then they find ancient water seeping down from beneath and filling that well. And what they do is, they after digging one hole, they dig various, you can say, tunnels. And now they can dig as many holes as they can. They all have the same water. You got this? So you have dug a well here, and you get in touch with that ancient water, which is also flowing within other wells. So when you can get in touch with that water, there you are. You don't need to dig any more wells anymore. You are in touch with that. So when you are meditating on one given form now, and then on another form next, if you are sincere, you will see this particular form of the Madonna melting into, say, the form of Jesus, and that form of Jesus melting into, say, Buddha, and that form melting away into Ramakrishna. So you can, at this stage, after 50 years of practicing meditation, you can go to different wells. I would not recommend the same thing for others. But you can go and you'll get that same water, which all the wells say they contain. But there is a connection down there. So you go ahead, whatever form you like, whatever elevates you, do that. If you're feeling elevated doing the chanting, Hindu chants or Buddhist chants, do it. If you want to feel good, just falling down on your knees and praying to the Holy Mother, to Mother Mary, do it. The idea is, once you get to one particular level, it doesn't matter what form you'll get. In fact, Sri Ramakrishna, if you see, he wanted to experience God through various paths, through various modes, and through various avenues. And that's what he did. So from the devotional standpoint, he did that from the standpoint of yoga and from the standpoint of Vedanta, and he concluded that everything leads to the one reality. So do that. He experimented, you can experiment now. Go ahead. People say, you dig one. That is in the initial years. When you come to a certain depth, you don't need to bother. Sometimes there's some person who would like to feel elevated doing a particular chant. Do it. Sometimes he doesn't like to chant, he likes to meditate. Meditate. You're plumbing your own depths of consciousness. Yes, wonderful. Saying, go ahead. You'll come down to that piece of, you'll become like a piece of glass in the ocean of light.
So, to my understanding, Samadhi is another stage, is another level, and then enlightenment.
It is enlightenment.
It is enlightenment.
Because it is a stage of knowledge.
Okay, the way I understand it, in order to reach the stage of enlightenment, you have to die.
Yeah, body
and I'm not talking about the body dying. I'm talking about a death that has to take place in order for something to take.
Yeah.
And some people don't make it through.
Yeah.
They go crazy.
Yeah.
And wait, let me take my question.
Yeah.
Nobody talks about it.
Yeah.
Nobody says, okay, then you reach this, and then you're enlightened, and then once you reach enlightenment, if you could solidify it, there's no going back.
Yeah, there's no going back.
Right. So, but in order to make that leap, you have to completely die.
Yes, Swami
Not
Vivekananda
the body, but
uses
everything
a phrase from the biblical literature. The old man must die. So, the old man, your old identity dies. A new identity places your identity. The individual is no longer individual anymore, becomes the universal. So, like I mentioned, one exits one's individuality and emerges into something called the universality. It's like, they say there's something called a black hole. It's now posited that there's nothing, but there must be a white hole behind. So you enter a black hole and exit a white hole and come to another part of the universe. But it's like that. And what about your old identity? This old identity will run according to its old momentum. It's like, suppose you like coffee, okay? You will continue drinking coffee. You'll say, oh no, I'm an enlightened being, I won't have coffee. No, you won't even bother about that. If somebody offers you coffee, you'll just take. We'll say, oh, this guy likes coffee. But this guy is just a kind of a shell outside. Inside, the whole thing has kind of transformed. So yes, one has to die to become immortal.
And that could take years, too. It's not like there are people that say it happens quickly, but there are also people that never make it through and go crazy.
You know what happens? There are some people who don't follow the methodology that has been laid down by those who have traversed this path. So if you can follow the correct steps, you can get it. And about time, it depends on how much you can sacrifice for that. How much time you can give that for that, or how much you can say part of your life that you can dedicate for this. So it's like we nibble here and then we say, okay, I've had enough for today. Then the next day we kind of nibble here. Once after all this nibbling, you really get a taste of that. The joy of spiritual practices. Then that is going to draw your mind more and more and more, and you will invest more time into that. Later on, you don't need to keep a separate time for that. You will find you can do things meditatively, like listen to music meditatively, garden meditatively, walk meditatively, talk meditatively. So your whole day is full of that meditative state. Okay? Then it becomes much, much easier. Instead of, 1 hour in the evening, 1 hour in the afternoon, 1 hour in the... no. Then your whole day, then you have started a kind of a flow. The subconscious mind is now flowing slowly and slowly and slowly. So at one point, like what you said is right. The old man must die. And Swami Vivekananda said the old man is a selfish idea that this world is meant for our enjoyment. So that old man, he says, as the old Christians say, the old man must die. I don't know which book exactly this quotation comes, but I'm taking it just kind of at face value. I'm not going to question it. Yeah.
You mentioned the curtain of Maya and how the audience
Yeah.
they're paying attention when the curtains are to Maya and the cosmos being closed.
Yeah. Sri Ramakrishna also gives another example, like when you have a pool of water which is covered by scum, you push the scum away, then you see the water, you touch the water, and then the scum again slowly dances its way back and covers. So that's the way Maya covers things up and externalizes us. So why does it happen? Well, that's the nature of Maya. She'll give you a glimpse of this reality and cover it up. Now you strive again. And then as you strive, you tear that veil, and again it comes back again. So Samadhi also, till you come down to the state of the supersensuous knowledge, when all the scum and all the curtains are ripped off forever, then you can see the reality all the time, everywhere. You become that reality. So the example is given like the fruit in the palm of one's hand. It's tangible to you. There's no intervening curtains trying to externalize me. So during these early stages, it will close. And then again, kind of open it with the effort, you open it, and then again. Then once you feel that Maya thinks that is competent, so the best way is Maya has been personalized as a divine mother. So the best way is, oh mother, please, why do you want to hide yourself like this? Take away all those curtains. So prayer also to the Divine Mother is extremely potent, because at one point of time I know my limitations. I know I just can't push hard enough. So I use my devotion. Okay, this Maya is the great Maya, the enchantress. She has created this whole universe by her mere wish. No, I wish I could go down there to the beach. I'm sitting down here. Well, my wish will not carry me straight down there. I have to walk up to the car at least and take a car and drive down, all that, But with the case of Divine Mother, her will is irrepressible. She wills the creation of this universe, and the creation of the universe emerges out. From where? From her. So this whole play of Maya is her will. So you just go and say, oh mother, please take away this curtain of mine. And she will. That is what Sri Ramakrishna has come to teach us in this life. If you are sufficiently sincere, if you sufficiently surrender to Mother, oh, she'll take care of it. Oh, she will. All curtains are ripped. There you are. Okay. Yeah, and you know what? This people are so kind of hell-bent on, depending on their own ego. No, I'll try it a little more. Oh, no. So what have I fallen 1,000 times? I'll pick up. Don't pick yourself anymore. Go and fall down at Mother's feet. So the moment you do that, there. So Mother will say, okay, now the guy has learned the lessons. But ordinarily, yes, she deflects one's understanding to the external world. Okay. So that's it. Even great spiritual aspirants, momentarily they are deluded. And that is her play. She'll make even the greatest one of us crawl like a worm. Now crawl, and she will clap. There you go. So we approach that power, this tremendous power, with veneration, with devotion, and it will go away. Om, peace, peace, peace. Thank you. Yeah.